Have you ever done this? Or this? Or maybe this?
Which one is player one?
Then you have likely played video games on the NES. Back then, many of us played games with no guides and no hints. I remember playing a game, slowly improving, and in some cases, even beating it. But I didn't get all the way to the end of Castlevania. I rented the game as a kid, but I could never get past the first level. Recently, I've been having fun revisiting games from my past that I didn't finish as a kid. But for Castlevania, I wanted to make a little game out of it. On Discord, we had a little guessing game. I would play Castlevania with no hints and no guides, just practice. The questions were, how many hours would it take me to beat it? How many deaths would I have by the end? And how many times would Dracula kill me before I could claim victory over this game from my childhood? Think about your own guesses and I will tell you the story of what it took for me to beat Castlevania for the NES. Level 1 is a perfect introduction for the player. It makes sure that the player knows all of the controls needed to make it through the entire game. The skill that I was missing as a kid was how to use the sub-weapons, so I never got past the boss of level 1. Now that I was older and wiser, I knew that vital piece of information, and after reaching the vampire bat, I impressed myself by beating it on my first try. Stoked to finally beat level 1 after all these years, I started level 2. I got around the first set of Medusa heads, but I got my first death due to knockback on the second encounter with the Medusa heads. This section would also give me my first game over. After learning the pattern and getting past the deadly falling spikes, I found myself at the second boss, the Queen Medusa. I still had the stopwatch from earlier in the stage, and to my surprise, it worked, freezing the queen in place and leading me to another victory on my first attempt against the level 2 boss.
Okay.
Still in high spirits, I start level 3. I meet the Hunchbacks, get knocked back into some more pits, and Simon has his first death from... I think Simon gets the wind knocked out of him, so he lies down and when he wakes up, he's back at the checkpoint. After a bit of trial and error, I was able to make it to the twin mummy bosses. Again, I surprised myself by defeating them on my first try, just by swinging the whip as fast as I could until they were both gone.
Oh, phew.
The first section of level 4 brought a big spike in my death count. The moving platforms, along with the enemies that appear quickly from above and below, combined with Simon's fixed jump arc, made for lots and lots of death by drowning. I eventually learned how to use the stopwatch to make it through consistently, and after contending with a never-ending hunchback horde being flown in by giant eagles and some skeledragons, I reached Frankenstein's monster and Igor. They were tricky at first, because the game had trained me to just whip until the boss was dead. This fight was much more interesting because I had to avoid Igor the Hunchback while still getting shots on the monster. Once I stopped trying to brute force the boss fight and focused on the enemy pattern, I came out on top.
Oh, I thought I was dead. Oh my goodness.
I was revisiting this game with the Castlevania Anniversary Collection on the Switch. Since Castlevania gave the player unlimited continues, my chat and I decided that we would create a save state at the end of each session and load it at the start of the next session. This would simulate leaving the NES console on until I beat it, as was common practice back then. I knew that there were only 6 stages in the game, and while Stage 4 had a difficulty spike, I got through it and was feeling pretty confident. I posted this in Discord, including the line, "We may finish the game next week." This overconfidence would be punished when I picked up the game again. Stage 5 would take me 7 hours to beat. The problem is the hallway right before the boss. I died 83 times just in this hallway. It was definitely feeling a bit unfair at times. The Axe Knight would keep backing up to avoid getting hit. Combine this with the return of the Medusa heads, and keep in mind that Simon's jump arc is fixed. There were times where I guided Simon through the air, successfully avoiding everything, only to come down on an axe that had appeared beneath him that I could not avoid. On top of all the cheap shots, Castlevania crashed on me. twice. Just stop. Oh. I was doing real good. How many lives did I have left? This is the second time the game has crashed on me.
I can't even. I'm so salty right now.
This level was making me so salty. The few times I could get through the hallway, I was met with the Grim Reaper. Now, this is actually a very interesting boss fight. The Reaper will float around the stage while sickles appear and maneuver towards Simon. If Simon has a triple shot and enough ammo, then this boss fight is fun and interesting. If Simon has a hard time putting projectiles on the screen, then he will get overwhelmed, and it's just not fun for the player. I also had a bit of bad luck a few times where a sickle would just appear on top of Simon and there was nothing that I could do about it. So after my 83 hallway deaths, it took me 60 more attempts to finally come away with a narrow victory over level 5. But it was a sweet, sweet victory.
Oh, no. Nope, get out of there. No! I didn't know they were still gonna be there. Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh. Oh. We did it. Thank you, guys. Stage 5 complete.
If you've been admiring my background, or you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button to show appreciation. Thank you, and onward! Now with my adrenaline cranked up due to my latest win, I started level 6, the clock tower. I think that the most frustrating part of the clock tower was thinking that this was solid ground.
What? That's not ground?
Come on! This cog counts as solid ground, but this one doesn't? After about 30 minutes of game time, I found myself through the clock tower and at the staircase that led to Dracula. I had a little knowledge about Dracula from playing games like Super Smash Bros. I knew that Dracula had two forms, the Count and the Monster, and that he takes damage from headshots. This was still my first Castlevania game, so it took me a while to figure out the best plan for Dracula. I rightfully thought that the cross was the best for the Count, and I kept playing with the cross until I beat the Count. But then when I encountered the monster, I found that I needed the holy water. So I changed up my strategy to collect the holy water at the start of the fight, and I came up with a new strategy to defeat the Count using the whip. I finally figured out a feasible whip strategy, but I still needed to execute it. The monster, who I later learned was nicknamed the Cookie Monster, moves across the stage, eventually cornering Simon. And I would always take at least one hit after being cornered. So I needed to get to the Cookie Monster with 2 hits left in order to win. The worst part of the battle is having the Count spawn right on top of Simon. It feels like if he appears in just the right spot, then there's nothing I can do to avoid the hit. It took me 2.5 hours of just Dracula attempts before I was able to put together this run.
Oh. We did it. We did it. Unless there's some secret level or something, and if there is, I'm going to be super bummed. But we did it. I have never seen this screen on my television before.
I've since played through Castlevania a few more times. Now that I know the tricks, I can beat it in less than an hour. I went back and compiled all the data on when I died, how I died, and why I died to find out more about Castlevania's difficulty. so that I could answer the question, is Castlevania poorly designed, or do players just need to practice more? Check out this next video here for the results of the data analysis and other interesting stats on Castlevania's difficulty.